Hey everyone, welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast. For today, we're in May 2nd uh, of 2023 already. Uh, and as always, I'm Tom's Hardware Editor-in-Chief, Avram Piltch. I'm joined by Associate Editor Les Pounder, Raspberry Pi expert Ash Hill, and our very special guest, Ben from Raspberry Pi, who is here to talk about some Raspberry Pi education initiatives, including those around AI, which is a big topic lately. So, Ben Garside, what can you tell folks about yourself and what you do?
Well, I am a learning manager at the Raspberry Pi Foundation. So I was a teacher for quite a long time, taught computer science in a secondary school in the northeast of England before joining the foundation. And since then, I've just been involved in making learning resources, basically, for educators, online courses, and so on. So, yeah, that's me.
Very cool. So your latest learning program is all about AI. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so we're really excited. Basically, this work that we've been doing, we released, I think, only a couple of weeks ago now, and we call it Experience AI. So we've been working on this for, gosh, a long time, about a year now. So whilst the timing feels really good because AI is very much on people's radar at the moment, particularly since January when ChatGPT seemed to have exploded completely and blown everyone's mind. We've been working this for quite a long time. So what we've produced is a project that is kind of split into two main parts. We've got lessons, which is a series of 6 lessons designed to be taught by an educator. I mean, it could be in the classroom, could be in a club, but somebody facilitating that to lead the sessions around AI.
Yeah.
And with that, they come with everything that you would need to deliver a lesson. So lesson plans, slide decks, worksheets, and the like. And the other side of things is what we're calling the challenge. So that's more kind of self-guided learning. And it kind of goes hand in hand with the lessons. But by the end of it, the young people who take part will have a go at creating their very own machine learning model. And that is around creating their own music algorithm. So they will create a model that is able to produce or pick out music that they think would suit their likings on some kind of classes that they've selected, and they can take part in that. And very much like other things we've done before, like coolest projects, they can submit this and it will be judged by us, and we'll select some people to take part in an event at the end of that.
That's very cool. I mean, AI is a hot topic. We're talking just before the show. It's big news, isn't it, AI? So why is there a need to educate children in AI?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think, it's like we said before, it's very much on people's radars at the moment. And I think young people, I mean, even my son included, came home and said, oh, my friend actually had a go at ChatGPT and he used it to do his homework. That's really good. I mean, he won't be the only one, I'm sure. Sadly, he put in the wrong search term, so he ended up, the essay was completely wrong anyway. But by the by, I think any educator would tell you that their role is to teach young people, to help them to navigate the world around them, right? To understand the world and also prepare them for their futures. And I think it's very clear that AI is not only part of their world right now, but will definitely play a part in their future. So I think it's really important for us to kind of help them navigate that now, help them understand what the world is looking now, but also prepare them for this future that they're going to go into. And whilst technology is developing at quite a pace, I think what we're desperately trying to do is make sure we're teaching those fundamental concepts that are around AI machine learning. So when they read things in the news that might be kind of, some people might get a little bit scared about them. Certainly some news outlets are doing a little bit of scaremongering around it at the moment. That they can be a little bit discerning about this. They can, understand when we're talking about their system at home, that they know they're not talking to a human being. They know they're not talking to something that eventually turn into Skynet. They know it's just a data-driven system, and that's what our aim is to do, is to get them to understand the fundamental principles that make AI systems and machine learning work, to help them prepare them for that next step.
What are some challenges that you faced when designing a curriculum that would be open to beginners to understand AI?
Oh, It's a big challenge in terms of all the developments that are out there, I'd say. We face two main challenges. The first one being how we communicate these concepts to young people. And I think one thing that we've been talking about an awful lot is anthropomorphization. You can tell I've been talking about it a lot because I can say that word effortlessly now. And that's taken me a long time. But again, it's going back to that thing that we don't want to embody AI. We don't want to give young people this perception that they are robots, that are thinking machines. So a lot of the work we've done around these resources is using the right language to help them see them as, like I say, not embodied things. And to put that into context for you, I'll set you a little challenge. If you were, imagine you were going to tell a 12-year-old and who'd never come across one before, but tell them what an Alexa is, what kind of language would you use? I'm putting that back to you, Ashley. How would you describe that?
I'm not sure.
Like, for example, a common language you might say is that you might say that it listens, or it understands, or it sees, even if it's got a camera on it. And I think that what we're trying to do is not use that language. Whilst it's common language that's used, we think it's important not to use that language, because if we're talking about things like, should we be talking about learning or hearing, or should we be saying they receive inputs and they process data? And again, it takes that human element of, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
I used to do IT support, and a lot of times people would say, oh, this computer has it out for me. And I would emphasize, it just does exactly what you tell it to. It's not out to get you.
Although that capability could be developed now.
Hey, Avram, no.
Seriously though, sorry.
I think the other main challenge we had was around which concepts to start with. Where was the starting point for young people? What do they know and what they don't know? I think there's so few resources out there at the moment in regards to this. Is starting with that baseline of not knowing anything, and then what do we want to teach them? So we've had to make some design decisions along the way. For example, there's all sorts of different flavors of machine learning. I know that, for example, you could talk about supervised learning, unsupervised. So there are various different ones we could use. We decided to go supervised. We thought that's the easiest one we think that young people will be able to digest. And even within supervised learning, you can talk about neural networks, you can talk about decision trees, all these different varieties again. So it's finding a route through that, which we think will give them that baseline understanding in 6 lessons.
In 6 lessons, no less, yeah.
So how are the lessons delivered? Yeah. Is it chalk and talk as it used to be in the old days, or is it hands-on learning with the kids actually using the technology itself?
Well, I mean, definitely using a tool is the answer to that. And that was a challenge in itself, because tools aren't readily available. Not so much as, if you wanted to devise a unit on introducing programming, there's all different types of environments you can use to help you do that. And that's they're not so easy to come by with machine learning. So we're using a tool that's devised by a guy called Dale Lane, who works for IBM, called Machine Learning for Kids. And that's a really excellent tool, and it doesn't require any coding, which is an excellent aside to it, because we didn't want that to be any barrier for anybody at this age group. We want it to be accessible to people, whether or not they've done any coding, had any coding experience or not. So we use Machine Learning for Kids. It's very graphical, but with that tool, they can create their own machine learning models, which is really powerful. They can create their own classes, they can enter their own data, or they can use pre-built data sets. So yeah, so that's the kind of one we use. But to answer your original question, it's a mixture of both, right? Obviously, when you're introducing a new topic, there's an awful lot of concepts that you just need to describe. But we do also believe it's really important to put those concepts into practice, make their new learning concrete, if they're able to have a go at it and actually create something. And that sense of achievement, right, as well, I think, of making something that's theirs.
Are there any aspects of AI that you wanted to get into, but for some reason it just wasn't, we weren't able to include it into that curriculum because it's so short, or getting a beginner introduced into the topic is a huge undertaking, but anything like that?
Where we went down the route, I think with 6 lessons, it's always challenging. You had to make some sacrifice. I would have liked to have gone heavier into bias, I think. I mean, we have a whole lesson on bias, but I think there's a route through that where you can talk a little bit more about that, around the social and ethical issues around AI. But no, I don't think so. I think we were toying between supervised learning and reinforcement learning. So I would, if I was taking next steps, I would really like to do something around reinforcement learning, is what I'd say.
Neat. So what types of AI do you want kids to be learning about? Do you want them to be learning about large language models? Do you want them to be focusing more on like image recognition, speech recognition, generative image generating images? What are kind of the use cases that you think are most important?
Well, we wanted to go with as broad a range as possible. We thought it was possibly that the most important thing was to make sure that they have a full understanding or get the biggest experience, the broadest range of experience of different applications as possible. At the time of writing the unit and designing it, things like ChatGPT or large language models weren't readily available for young people, whereas they are now. Mm-hmm. So we're doing quite a lot of work in that space as well. So we'd like to create extra one-off activities, maybe a set of activities that could be delivered in different subject areas, maybe informed tutor time. We'd like to cover those kind of things. But yeah, we've covered image recognition. We tried to give as many realistic ones as possible, not just examples where they're theoretical. And this is where our partnership with DeepMind has come in really well. So we've been building these resources alongside DeepMind. And with that, they provided us with a working group of their experts. And they provided us with feedback and ideas. But one thing that's really been good is we've been able to cover some of the key concepts with people who work in the field. And one example of that is when we talk about classification. We have a video interview with this guy who's really passionately talks about it with the project that he's working on, and that was in relation to animals in the Serengeti. So his actual job is to use artificial intelligence to help identify wildlife in the Serengeti. So he speaks very passionately about that. So again, it's just that example of like real world examples where we can see these, the young people experiencing the lessons aren't just learning about something that doesn't really exist. They're seeing real experts talking about their work, and as you can imagine, they're very passionate about it too.
Great. So how are some of the ways that you find yourself interacting with kids to see how this is working for them?
How are we going about finding out? Sorry.
Yeah, how you kind of testing these lessons to see how effective they are.
So we're in a pilot phase at the moment, even though it's released them. I think it's pilot number 3 now. So we've gone through various different pilot stages where we've tested one-off activities, we've tested a lesson and then a series of lessons. So we've had a really helpful group, a network of schools and teachers and educators all been having a go at using these resources and providing us with plenty of feedback. So whilst we've released the lessons now, they are very, very much in still a development phase. We're very happy with them now. But anybody who's wanting to sign up, please do sign up and let us know how they're going, because we want to iterate on them and we want to make them as best they possibly can be. So yeah, if you're signing up for them, please do sign up for them and let us know how they go.
Very cool. So will these lessons, in the future, hopefully become part of the national curriculum in the UK?
Oh yeah, we would hope so. Yeah, absolutely. I think it feels like AI. I think particularly we've mentioned a number of times it's exploded recently, and I think a lot of people have been thinking for quite a while that AI will appear on the national curriculum. So hopefully by the time that appears, then this will be a good kind of lead up to that, where teachers can confidently say, well, we've had a go at this, and we feel like we can deliver it. We think that possibly because it's such a new area that teachers might not feel so confident in delivering it, and we're doing everything we can to support that. We're providing that we have an online course that you can sign up for on this that's designed specifically for educators. The lesson plans, we try to explain all the concepts, and going back to the videos, anytime that there's a new concept being described, we've always done that through a video with the DeepMinder trying to explain it in a way that's going to be accessible to young people.
Nice. It's almost like a continuation of the original mission of Raspberry Pi. getting this technology into kids' hands, but also the teachers' hands. So when Pi Academy came around, which is where I met you, Ben, it's getting this kit into the hands of teachers and showing them it's not scary. It's not just, it's not going to end the world. It is a piece of technology that can really help.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And it's that's the way we're approaching it. We're definitely doing it in collaboration with teachers, and it's important to note that we don't think necessarily we're the experts here. We're very much learning about what the right way forward is. I mean, as you can imagine, there's not any research fully being done in this area yet in terms of how young people learn about artificial intelligence. So yeah, we're taking our first steps in this. We believe we're going about it the right way, but we're here to learn, and we want to, like I said before, we want to iterate and do it in collaboration with teachers who are at the coalface.
No, definitely.
That is really cool. So, speaking of AI stuff, what are some of the coolest AI? What are some of the most interesting AI projects that you've tried lately?
Oh, well, they're very much application level projects. So they're not projects that are necessarily tried on the Raspberry Pi. We've been playing with a lot of toys, as you can imagine. Toys probably isn't the right word. I mean, but I had a lot of fun with ChatGPT, but I'm not sure if you've come across Adobe Firefly.
No, I haven't tried that yet.
So Adobe Firefly will create, it's essentially the graphical version of ChatGPT. You can put in any prompts and it will create you some images in relation to that. It's quite an exciting tool. And what's really impressive about it is it's actually, I wouldn't say it's 100% perfect, but in terms of, you can imagine the common bias that we expect to see from these things. For example, if I put in, find me a picture of a footballer, you might expect it just to pick like a white male, for example, but it actually doesn't. It's really good at diversity in this. So clearly they've thought about this in their image things as well, which is really satisfying to see it.
Great. I mean, I have been spending a lot of time going down the rabbit hole of AI. I've been trying to do it on things that have a little bit more GPU power than the Pi. Although I'd like to figure out if they scale down to running on a Pi. So yesterday I installed this MLC LLM, which so far I've been trying to get running on a Pi, but I'm having trouble installing Conda, which is another story. But what it's good for is, I mean, it can run locally. It needs about 6 gigabytes of RAM and about 6 gigabytes of storage. It can run on some iPhones. It can run on an older PC, and it's not great. I mean, but neither is ChatGPT. ChatGPT makes things up too. Like, for example, it was hilarious. I asked it who Avram Piltch is, who I am, and it said that I'm an inventor who invented contact lenses with built-in AR.
You never told us that.
Have a camera. Yeah, I didn't know. I forgot. By the way, such a product doesn't exist. So it just comes up with weird stuff. Or I asked it who the 5th president of the United States is, and it gave me the wrong answer.
That's not good.
Twice, although it has a weird way of calculating it. It said that first it said the 5th president was Thomas Jefferson.
No,
and then
it's third.
Right. The correct answer is James Monroe, by the way. And then it said the 5th answer. Then another time I asked it said it was James Madison. And its logic for this had something to do with what term they were in, like being the 5th term or something that somebody served, as opposed to. But that's not even correct in both those cases. So, there's many language models, it makes stuff up and it has problems.
That goes back to what Ben was saying earlier about how it does what you tell it to, as far as it's trying to determine the parameters to pull the information that you want. So it just kind of created its own parameters. But if you were able to say which president, not which term, it couldn't differentiate that. It doesn't have that kind of context that we just instinctively know what you're talking about.
I mean, that's an interesting one, but the one where it actually just full out
makes stuff up
like that, that I have make this contact lens or whatever, I can't see any basis on the internet or anywhere where it would have gotten that idea. So, and it wouldn't be the first time that we've seen large language model, what they call hallucinate, in the industry. What I would like to do, and I was playing with this the other day, is to create a private, and I know some people have done things like this, to create a chat bot that only answers questions based on content we have on Tom's Hardware and will not answer the question if we don't have the answer.
It can admit defeat.
Like, that's the problem. One of the biggest principles that's wrong with the LLMs is they're designed to never to rare. Well, they don't never, but designed to rarely. They don't fail gracefully. Like, you would, if it's a computer program, you would want it to crash. You ask it a question, and you want a 404 error on a website. You ask it a question, it doesn't know the answer. Say, I don't know the answer. Right? That's what you want, and you want to be able to limit where the answers are coming from, so they're not just coming from anywhere.
And kids, this is why you shouldn't use ChatGPT for your homework.
Right. Well, you shouldn't, because it makes stuff up, and the other thing is it doesn't cite where it got the information from,
and it doesn't help you grow
by default. So there's nobody is responsible for the misinformation, right? Like, oh, you say that who's saying that the fifth president of the United States is Thomas Jefferson? Where did you get that? This is why citing sources is so important. Then you can find out whether it's a reputable source or a disreputable source. Whereas one of the biggest problems with AI is, and I think this is really the companies that have made AI, have really made AI big right now, like OpenAI, they don't want you to know where the training data came from, because they want it to look like, oh, wow, this thing is so creative. It can just make things. It just knows things just like a person. Therefore, there's no need to tell you where it got this information. I mean, if I tell you that the fifth president was James Monroe, you don't ask me like, oh, well, where'd you get that information? Well, I just knew it. It was in, Encyclopedia Britannica that I read when I was 5 years old, or whatever. Right? I mean, so I think there's a real problem with LLMs. I think it would be really interesting, though, to be able to create one that answer questions based only on a trusted data set. And then, if we could, do something like put it up on our site and have, you could ask a question and it would answer stuff based on what we, only on information that we trust. Right. I think that would be an interesting use case.
We were talking about how we would talk to young people about these large language models, and one of my colleagues said that we should phrase it like this to young people, which I thought was brilliant. I said, how would you deal with a friend who sometimes is right, sometimes completely wrong, sometimes in between, but most importantly, they're always really confident they're right, and you don't know which one it is? And I think that sums up large language models absolutely perfectly. Sometimes
you wouldn't. I think the answer is you wouldn't trust them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's how we should be, right? Isn't it? We shouldn't trust them. I think how we use them. I think a lot of us use them like search engines, expect us just to give us the answer to something, but they're not search engines. They're there to kind of augment what we want to achieve. It'd be great if you said, give me some ideas for this, and it gives you some ideas. But to say be right about something is probably the wrong approach, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's but Google, is talking about putting those on its search engine. Bing already has. I was looking in my start menu today on Windows, and it had a little ad for Bing where it said, "Your AI-powered co-pilot. Say goodbye to endless search results." Because who would want information from a trusted source as opposed to, a bot that can't be trusted? So, I think it's dangerous. I think AI is such a great tool, and what you're doing is so important, because we need AI literacy. People need to know how the tools work, and I'm still learning. It's real hard for me to understand some of the really basic fundamentals of how they work, but I'm trying. And I feel like when you teach, instead of the problem of AI right now in chatbots is, it's actually the opposite, I think, of everything that the maker movement stands for and Raspberry Pi stands for, in the sense of the people just going into a chatbot and expecting it to do things for them is being a passive consumer. And we're trying to create, a generation of people who take control, who understand how things work, who program, right? And like you can use AI as a tool to help you with those things. But if it's a crutch, then if you're using it as a crutch to not have to do anything, then you're creating, a generation of couch potatoes who are, it's like the people in the Wall E or whatever sitting around having the robots feed them, right? Like that's where we're really vulnerable to misinformation. We're vulnerable to, to all, we're turning over too much the keys to these things because people aren't like treating them as a tool. They're treating them as a intelligence or something.
That reminds me of something I was reading recently talking about today's youth. The idea was years ago, whenever I was back in high school, like over 10 years ago, they were saying, oh, kids these days are going to be raised on computers. They're going to be so computer literate. They're going to be so smart. No, they can work a user interface really well, but they didn't have computers like we did where you had to sometimes open command prompt. And a lot of them don't know what a file system is, like how to use a file manager, like the concept of having things organized in a certain structure. They just go to the cloud or they open their start menu, they search for it, it pulls it up, it pulls everything up for them. And like you said, without that kind of that literacy, without understanding what AI is on a functional level, they're just going to look at it as a tool that just magically, can pull everything that they need on the spot.
Yeah, and that's what's dangerous. Like, get it, use it as a tool. I personally, right now, I'm having a lot of fun trying to use different types of AI models and not just and mainly not the LLMs. I would cough less if I wasn't up so late playing with
working
them.
so hard on it.
I haven't really got this to an article level, but I've been playing with something called Whisper AI. Have you guys tried it?
Not yet.
No, heard of it.
So Whisper is an ASR model from OpenAI that you can download and run locally, and it will transcribe any audio. So you can feed it a video, or you can feed it an MP3 file or a WAV, and it'll give you like a second by second breakdown of what is said, and it does a really good job. But that's not that's basic, that's basic stuff. But what I was trying to do is also work with it. There are other tools to do what's called diarization. Do you guys know what diarization is?
No.
So diarization is something where they use where the AI determines who is speaking. So if you've got multiple like if you only have one person talking in the whole clip, then you don't need this. But if you've got, like, if I was to take the audio from this show, right, and run it, you would want to know what I said at what time, what you said, what Ben said, what Ash said. You'd want to know. You'd want a list. You'd want that. And if you're just doing straight ASR, it won't do that. It'll just give you everything, together. So what this does is it will actually go through and it will give you, like, it'll name the speakers, like speaker 0, speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, and and then if speaker 3 speaks again, it'll distinguish them. So I've been trying to find a project that works to do this, and I found one, but I got to tweak it to get the output I want. And then what I really want to do with it is then combine that with translation AI. So I can take something that's like a foreign language video, like I can go to a site like Bilibili, which has a lot of Chinese language videos, tech videos, that we might be able to find some, a scoop, new information, take one of their videos, run it through there, and then I'll have like a, transcript of it in English, and I could, look it over and be like, oh, here's the nugget. Here's what I wanted to. Here's some news for me. But anyway, there's a lot of cool things like that you can use, and not just use, but you can program into Python to have it your way to combine all the different things that all those different models together. So I don't know. I personally found that kind of cool. I'd like to be able to like point it at a video and just have like a YouTube video, And there's another library called PyTube that'll download YouTube videos for you. Point it at a video and just be like, okay, transcribe this for me, put in the speakers and translate it to English if it's not in English. So, I think that's a great use of AI, doing something that like identifying something, identifying language, identifying images, great use of AI. Asking it to give you advice, to be creative, those are where I really think people are overhyping, and it's dangerously so.
One of the projects on the lessons is we asked them to, well, they get a choice of projects. One of them is to do something around climate action by using data from the world's oceans. But the other one is to try and create a classifier that will identify fake news, which is kind of fun because the data set is, well, it was hard for us to find a data set that was appropriate for this age group for a start of fake news, but we did find a data set, but largely it was, a lot of the fake news happened to be around Donald Trump for whatever reason. So if whatever they use to kind of to copy and paste from the internet, once they train their model, they can go and find a news story and copy and paste it and see what confidence score it returns and to whether or not it's a fake news story or a real news story. So that's a good starter project because they'll find out that actually it's not perfect at it, because using classification for that kind of thing is not always the best way to do it. But yeah, they find that out for themselves. So again, it goes back to what we were saying before. It's a really good idea that hopefully students will think, oh, I could use AI to help me do that kind of thing. It's also relevant because it maybe gets them to understand that fake news is a thing. But I think with the model not being perfect, that's a good thing for them to evaluate at the end of it and say, well, why wasn't it perfect? And how good is it and how difficult is it to identify fake news? So yeah, that's been a fun project that we've worked on too.
It all goes back to how much do you trust the machine to give you the truth?
Yep. So Les, you've been working on some cool projects this week. What's been on your plate?
Well, I'm back to work today after a bank holiday in the UK. So I thought I'd start something cool, something interesting. So we all know Raspberry Pi is sort of the king of single board computers. It just works. I'm not saying because Ben's here. It's experience over 10 years of using it. But I've got something else. So I've got the Cadis Vim 1S on the board. Now, I've reviewed the Cadis Vim 4 and the Edge 2 Pro before, but this is sort of a cheaper option. This is about $65. So it's comparable with a Raspberry Pi 4 gig. I'm doing a quick bit of mental maths there. And spec-wise, it's a little bit better. So let me just get the spec sheet up so I can say with confidence what I'm talking about here. We've got a quad-core ARM CPU, 2 gig. It can do 4K video. It's got 2 gig of LPDDR4, so 2 gig of RAM. That's okay.
Yeah.
But it's got 16 gig of onboard storage, eMMC5 storage. So 16 gig is not a lot of storage, but for this Ubuntu install I've got on here, it's absolutely fine. And to install software, you don't have to go and get an SD card. You just use the built-in eMMC and you boot this board, the Vim 1S, into what's called UWOW mode, which is like a BIOS mode. And you download images, so Ubuntu and Android are the two at the moment I've spotted. Install them, and it just works. It's configured for that board. So I wanted to do something that I've always done with Raspberry Pis, and that is to make flashy lights turn on and off. So I have in front of me, so actually slightly to my left, a breadboard with an LED resistor. I've also got, hidden away under the wires here, a push button. And I've got it wired into the GPIO of the Vim 1. And I've got a script running, you can see on the right-hand side saying press the button. And this is written in Bash. So this is not Python or anything like that. It's pure Bash script. And it's reading the state of a certain pin. And when the pin state changes, it triggers the code to run. So if I press the button now, it's going to go from low to high. So we're going to connect that pin to 3 volts. And you'll see it's asking for a sudo password once again, which it didn't do last time. So let's give it the password. There you go. Nothing like a live demo, is it really?
Beautiful.
So just keep pressing it and it will say, okay, press the button, lights are on and off. So that's the hello world of being a maker, making stuff turn on and off. So still work in progress for this review, but I thought I'd have a play around because previously the Vim 4 and the Edge 2 Pro have been super boards for performance. The GPIO was okay I want to see if there's been any improvements for this one, because this is more maker orientated with $65 in price, like a drop-in replacement for a Pi. Can you put a Pi Hot in it? I'm going to find out later on.
That's pretty spiffy. I love that you had to clarify that that's the Hello World version, because you listed off all these cool specs and all it did was flash a light, Les.
Yeah. But, I mean, a quad-core 2 gig CPU and flashing LED, what more do you want, really? As
that might be enough power to pull that off. I don't know.
I've got an AT Tiny somewhere that can do it with about 16 megahertz and about 32K of RAM. That'll do it. And someone's going to say, should have used a 555 now in the chat, probably.
Very cool. So we're running out of time, but I wanted Ash to talk a little bit about some of the coolest projects that we saw last month, since it's the beginning of May.
Yeah, every month we share a list of the best Raspberry Pi projects that we've had the honor of featuring, and we cover a lot of really cool stuff. And it's hard to pick 10, but I'll share with you guys just a few of the ones that I thought were pretty neat. And of course, you can find the full list over at tomshardware.com. It's coming up in the next day or two. Let me adjust my OBS here. All right, so the first one I wanted to share with you guys is this Raspberry Pi Retro TV box. We've covered Raspberry Pi TVs before. They're pretty straightforward. There's a Pi inside. It's got a screen. You can play games with it and watch movies or whatever you've got, media files available. But what I like about this one is the case is 3D printed with wood filament. And I love the way that it uses box joints to connect the sides together. It just looks beautiful. And those knobs work, so it looks old school, but they pull open a drawer, and inside is a little handheld keyboard mouse combo that you can use for input. So I just like the little details that went into making this one. It looks really good. It's not just a little TV replica. It's like a really well-designed end product that the maker had to think of from beginning to end to get it to where it is. I thought that one was pretty spiffy. And the next one I wanted to share is this electronic flower dress. And I don't think we have a video of it. We only have pictures of it. But it's a dress with these little flowers. And when you hit a button, the flowers will bloom open. And I think, does it use a Pico or does it use a full Pi? Les, you covered this one.
It's not using either. It's using an Atmel chip, an 18 mega of some sort. I can't remember which one it is now.
But you could do it with a Pico. That's why it was there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really down to the bones of the hardware for this. It's I'm going to guess it's 18 mega, same as an Arduino Uno. But it's just the workmanship that's gone into it that astounds me.
It's beautiful. And can you imagine being at a party and then some lady just walks by and her dress just blooms? I mean, talk about Belle of the Ball.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And the third one I had to share, I'm just a sucker for Game Boys. If you guys have watched the show before and heard me ramble about Game Boys, I mean, they're cool. And this one, it does use a Pico. It's acting like a cable sniffer, and it interacts with the link port on the Game Boy, and it can simulate different functions. So in one example, they were able to send commands to a Game Boy printer to print out pictures. And in another example, if you can see this picture, they've got a Game Boy Yellow cartridge plugged into an Advance SP. So that's an original Game Boy and an original cartridge. It's not emulating the game itself. But if you go into that Pokemon game on that Game Boy and you go to the trade center, you can initiate a trade with what it thinks is another Game Boy, but it's really talking to the Pico, and you can just send yourself all of the legendaries that you want using the Pico. So it's cheating. Yeah, it's hacking, but it's cool.
That's clever. I mean, it's decoding the protocols as well, how it all talks to one another. That's amazing. And it's a $4 Pico.
Yeah. And then you can get the Mew of your dreams.
Amazing what you can do with Picos. Amazing.
Yeah.
One thing I would really like to do also is figure out how maybe I could combine Pico with, using something else in my house as sort of a speech, text-to-speech, because I don't know how much speech recognition you can do. How much speech recognition can you do on a Pico, Les? Or bad?
To be honest, I don't know. Probably some, but I don't know.
because I know there was a microphone on the Arduino RP2040 board, right? So
Yes.
so there was some thought that you with RP2040 you could do it. Do you know anything about this, Ben? How to do voice recognition with a Pico?
I haven't tried that yet, but now you've planted that seed, I want to try.
Yeah. So I wonder. I mean, I know there's like the tiny ML stuff. I wonder how much you can do in that locally versus like go hitting something in the cloud to do it. But I think it would be cool to have be able to use some kind of voice recognition in a Pico project.
Yeah, well, the Pico's got enough grunt to do basic image classification, hasn't it? Identification, I should say.
That's
because we had the Ardu cam about
right
a year ago now that could do it.
Right. So I bet you somebody's looked into this. I'm gonna have to Google this right after to see. But yeah, there's obviously a lot going on with language models and things that you can just use API keys to get from the cloud. So Pico W possibly get things from the cloud. Anyway, now we have our project to-do list for the future. Hopefully next week I will have some kind of large language model or something running on a Pi. But until then, thanks everyone. Thank you so much, Ben. And we will be back here next week at the same time, which is 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. UK time. Bye, everyone.